Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks so much thanks, James, for inviting us out tonight. My name's Kevin Benson, and I am the Director of Development for World Relief Spokane. My colleague Lisa is here with me this evening, and you'll hear from Lisa in just a few minutes. So I want to jump in and just ask you some questions. I know that you thought, oh, good, the school year's over, and maybe I don't have to, take any more pop quizzes. But pop quiz, here we go. My first question for you is, and this goes to, it'll help you understand the work that is that we do. What is a refugee? What's the definition of a refugee? Someone fleeing their country. Yes. Why are they fleeing their country? There's always a second part of the question, isn't there? Because they're in danger. They're in danger. Right. So a refugee is someone who is fleeing their country against their will. They are forced to flee their country because they have a well-founded fear of persecution. Persecution from what? Well, they could be persecuted because of their race. They could be persecuted because of their religion, their nationality. Maybe they're members of a particular social group or have a particular political opinion. They have a well-founded fear that they could be hurt or in trouble because of who they are in the country in which they live. Now, this sounds like, as Americans, this sounds like something that's kind of foreign to us. It's wild. Why would someone persecute me because of who I am? But you think about war and devastation around the world, that there are people all over the world that face this kind of persecution. And you're going to find out how many in just a minute. So a refugee is someone who is forced against their will to leave their home country because they have the fear of persecution or violence. This is something I want everyone to know. Refugees don't want to be here. They want to go home. They want to be with their families. Refugees are refugees because they have been forced to leave their situation. They've been forced to leave their situation. So, right now around the world, pay attention, take some notes, there's 80 million people. I'm going to say that number again. 80 million people who have been forced or have had to make the painful choice to leave their home. And folks, right now, every day that number grows every day by 44,000 people. What's the population of Post Falls? Like 20 or 12? Something like that? How many? Yeah. Twice, 2 Post Fallses a day have to leave their homes because of fear of persecution. 80 million people are currently displaced around the world. I can't even fathom a number like that. 80 million people are currently living in temporary shelters or temporary places. So, we've talked about what a refugee is. Now, let's find out, what is an immigrant? You can't answer because you already answered once, so you already got a point. An immigrant's different than a refugee. How do you think an immigrant is different? That's right. Someone who was choosing to relocate to another country. They're choosing to relocate to another country, maybe because of economic reasons. Maybe they can go somewhere because they can make more money for themselves or their family or support people they care about. Maybe they're going to another country for educational reasons. Maybe they're going to another country for family reasons. So one of the first things I want you to know is the difference between a refugee and an immigrant. We have a lot of conversations in our country right now about immigration and refugees and migration and all these kinds of things. We tend to lump everything together, and it's not. It's actually very specific and unique. Refugees are people who have fled their home against their will and are going to another country to be safe. So, why would people leave their country? Well, right now, we have, unfortunately, and we've had for centuries on this planet, is we have war. There's currently wars, active wars in Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. We could list them. We could go on and on and on. Central and South America, Latin America, all these places all around the world where wars are happening. Every day, thousands and thousands of people are having to leave their home because of war against their will. Oftentimes, they are persecuted because of all those reasons we said earlier: race, nationality, religion, belonging to a particular social group or kind of group. Another reason why people are leaving their homes is because of slavery. You know, we don't talk about slavery much in this country. We think it's a something we fought in the Civil War several hundred years ago, and we think it's a historical relic. It's not. There's slavery happening around the world today, in places like India, Myanmar, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and North Korea. Some of these places are asking children as young as 10, 11, or 12 years old to pick up guns and go fight in their wars. People are leaving their countries not because they want to, but because they have to go to a place where their families are going to be safe. So things like war and slavery are other reasons why people would leave. I gave you this answer earlier, and now I'm going to come back to it. How many people are forcibly displaced worldwide? 80 million. Good job, you guys. You listen. Even the baby got it right, too. Girl, sing. Right now, this chart is from the United Nations High Council on Refugees. There's 79.5 million people. This number is actually old. The number's much higher now. It's above 80 million. Of that 79 million people, 26 million are refugees. And that number continues to go up by astonishing numbers, by an astonishing amount every day. So now you might be wondering, okay, Kev, you work where World Relief. World Relief is a refugee resettlement organization and a nonprofit. We help refugees when they arrive in the United States and they arrive in our community. We help them get resettled. Well, how many of them do you think are going to end up in Spokane? Oh, I gave you this number just now. Let me move forward a little. Oh, let me help you understand one other quick thing. When refugees are forced to flee their country, they don't just up and, walk over to the States. They usually go to a safest place they can get to. And most of the time, the United Nations will put them in a refugee camp. Now, you might have just noticed because I just put it up on the screen, but what do you think is the average length of stay for someone in a refugee camp on this planet? What's your guess? A couple months, a couple years? The average stay in a refugee camp is 17 years. And that number is going down. And that number is not going down because we're getting better at placing people. That number is going down because the people displaced has gone up so much. Right? The average used to be 17 years, and it's now come down to about 10 years. Not because we're getting faster at it, but because so many millions of people are entering refugee camps around the world. So the average stay in a refugee camp is 17 years. More than half of the people in refugee camps are children. So of those 26 million people, we're talking 12, 13, 14 million children around the world that are living in refugee camps and probably will spend their entire lives in refugee camps or their entire young lives. So now you might be asking yourself, okay, Kev, you're with World Relief, you resettle refugees. How many refugees do we resettle in the United States? So I'm going to ask you this next question. Just yell out the country that you think houses the most refugees in the world. What do you think are the top 5 refugee receiving places in the world? Germany? China? Korea? These are good guesses. US? France? Canada? Good. Good guesses. Good guesses. Most of them wrong. I think we got some of them. We got Germany. So here's the big heavy hitters. Turkey right now. I'm sorry that my numbers got all squished over there. Turkey is the biggest right now. Turkey receives 3.6 or 3.7 million refugees a year. Colombia has gone up significantly. Do you know why? Because of Venezuela. Because so many people are fleeing Venezuela, they're going to Colombia. Colombia has received 1.8 million refugees. Pakistan and Uganda, which are very near active wars happening right now, have each received 1.4 million refugees, and Germany has received 1.1. In the year ending 2000, or in 2020, how many refugees do you think we resettled? Or sorry. Through 2021, so far in 2021, how many refugees do you think we've resettled? In the United States. Oh, I wish. We've resettled less than 3,000 people in this country so far this year. Less than 3,000 people. We had averaged 85 to 100,000 people since 1980. And so far we've resettled less than 3,000 people in this country. Of the 80 million people around the world who are waiting for a place to call home, we have resettled less than 3,000 of them. And there's two reasons for that. One of them is the pandemic, but the other is we lost the political will to resettle refugees. Refugees were never a partisan political issue up until 4 or 5 years ago. We were always a country that welcomed people from other places, and we stopped doing that. Now, let me finish up this last bit here, and then I'll invite my friend Lisa to come up and share with you a little bit. Usually when a refugee arrives to a country where they can stay before they come to the United States, the United Nations High Council on Refugees gives them a camp. Now, I wish that camp was something like a resort, but it's usually a place that have an enormous amount of tents or temporary shelter, and there are hundreds of thousands of people in these camps. This is a camp in Southeast Asia. I believe it's in Thailand. This is a camp in India. There are more than 1 million people that live in this camp. There's all dirt roads. It's all temporary shelters. 1 million people. OSHA does not inspect any of these buildings. No one has fire extinguishers in their tents. So you might have read in the news earlier this year there was a fire in one of these camps. And it killed thousands of people because these places are very unsafe. It's like going camping with 999,000 of your best friends, right? This is one of the camps in Kenya. This is the Dadaab refugee camp, and this was in January of 2018. There's almost 250,000 people that were living in this camp. And I want to tell you a really exciting and cool story about Kenya, and this just happened yesterday. So yesterday afternoon, Lisa and I and all of our World Relief staff got to go to the airport because for the first time in several months, we had a new refugee arrival. And it was 2 young people. And they were the son and daughter of a woman who also is a refugee that came to live here in Spokane. She came here, I think, 6 or 7 years ago. She came from Africa. When where'd she leave? Was she in Congo? Is that right? She was in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and there's some war going on right there, and she had to leave her home and leave her village very quickly, and her kids went one way, and she went another way, and she thought they were dead. She thought she would never see her kids again. So she came to the United States about 6 years ago, and she found this thing called Facebook, upon which you can find anything you want to know about anyone, and she found that her kids were alive, and they were living with relatives in a different part of the world, and so she came to the United States, and she's been here for 6 years now, and she's established herself as a lawful permanent resident, and she's able to ask her kids to come be with her. Last night, I got to go to the airport, and I got to witness a reunion between a woman who had not seen her children in 13 years. And yesterday, those children got on a plane in Nairobi, and then flew to Dubai, and then flew to Los Angeles, and then flew to Spokane, and then walked off a plane and got to see the mother that they had not seen in 13 years. Right? When I first started working for World Relief, I was asking my boss, do you cry every day? And he says, oh yeah, almost every day. So, there's so many interesting things and amazing things that we get to do at World Relief, and I'm going to move ahead a little bit right now. These are just a couple of pictures about different schools and different refugee camps. Most young people in refugee camps don't go to school. Some do. It really depends on where you are in the world. Less than 0.1% of all refugees will ever end up in the United States. The vast majority of them will not. There's just no place for them. We're hoping that this year we'll be able to increase the number of refugees that come to the United States. We're hoping for somewhere between 10 and 20,000 this year, and that's for the entire country, by the way. That's only a couple hundred here in Spokane, in the Spokane area. Let me give you this one last slide before I ask my friend Lisa to come up. One of the things that comes up in talking about the political will of people to resettle refugees is, do refugees pose any kind of security risk? Well, I'll tell you this. In 1980, the federal government passed what's called the United States Refugee Admissions Program. And we had passed it because we were having a significant number of refugees come from Southeast Asia. What do you think was happening in the late 60s and early 70s that the United States felt responsible to welcome people from Southeast Asia? The Vietnam War. In 1980, we welcomed over 200,000 refugees, the most refugees we've ever welcomed in the history of our country in this program. And we've never welcomed a number that high since. And we passed this law. In that time, in the 41 or so years we've been doing this, over 3 million refugees have been admitted to this country, and not one has had any kind of terrorist-related deaths connected to these refugees. They love to be here. They go through so much just to get to our country. And we are privileged to welcome them here. I'm going to skip over some of these things because I could talk forever and ever, but I want to bring my friend Lisa up here, and I want my friend Lisa to tell you the story of one of my coworkers and friends. Her name is Pingala Detal. Lisa has been with our community and church engagement team for several years and leads a few different parts of our work. But Lisa, would you tell us about Pingala, and then I'll ask you some more questions.
Yes. Were you going to have me go over the slide for the...
I want you to do Pingala and then talk about weave and talk about citizenship.
Perfect. Okay. Hi again, everyone. I'm going to tell you about Pingala. And last night we actually had a Zoom fireside chat where Pingala told her story to a few people. I host those quarterly, so you all have my card on your table. If you would ever like to be invited to those, just reach out to me and I'll make sure you get an invitation. What I do in the fireside chat is I have someone who is a former refugee who has gone all the way through the naturalization process to come and tell their story. But tonight I want to specifically talk about Pingala because her story is one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard. Pingala has a story that needs to be written about in a book. It needs to be made into a movie. Pingala's story started in 1987. She's from Bhutan, and during that time she lived there, they did a census in Bhutan. And her tribe had gotten so big that the Bhutanese government became fearful of them, because they represented 30 to 40% of their population. So that would be like, for those of us in Spokane, if people from Post Falls got too huge in our population, we would start taking drastic measures to get everyone out of there, such as raping the women and killing the women, taking them hostage. We would start bombing your homes, burning your homes, taking your personal property. That's what the government of Bhutan did to this specific tribe of Bhutanese people. So Pingala's family had to flee Bhutan, and Bhutan is neighbors with India. And as you can see from her picture, she looks like a beautiful Indian woman, right? So the thought was that the Bhutanese people could blend in pretty easily with the people in India, but what happened when they got there is that because India had really good diplomatic relations with Bhutan, India didn't want them. So they had no place to go. They tried going to Thailand. Thailand didn't want them. And we're talking thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people. So they eventually ended up in Nepal and lived in a refugee camp. And Pingala is one of those women and her entire family who lived in a refugee camp for 18 years. She got married in the refugee camp. She had her children in the refugee camp. Well, this amazing woman is she's just a ball of fire. I wish you could meet her. She is a huge advocate of education, of women, and through some other people outside of her refugee camp, she was able to establish relationships with over 37,000 women to help their children to get education and to build this very strong bond that would move them forward to have a safer world. Well, because of that, she was able to meet with prime ministers and heads of state, and unfortunately, we would think that would be a great thing, right? But what it meant for her and her family was that the rest of the Bhutanese people in her camp, her own people, felt threatened by what she was doing because she was, mixing things up a bit. She was causing trouble in their mind. And so one day, she had made a trip to the embassy, And when she came back, her home and all of her belongings had been destroyed. She also shared that one of the reasons that they had to flee, as I mentioned, was that the women, the young girls, were being kidnapped, raped, tortured, sold into slavery. And they thought that by leaving Bhutan and getting into India or Nepal or wherever they could be, that would go away. But it didn't. The very people that promised them safety still tried to rape them and kidnap them and sell them into slavery. She shared that it wasn't until she got married that she felt safe. So fast forward, Pingala caused so much trouble in a good way in her refugee camp that she and her family had to be airlifted out of the camp. And they were the first Bhutanese family to be resettled in the entire United States of America. They thought they were going to Washington, D.C. because their ticket said Washington, and they just assumed it was Washington, D.C. And they were staying with a host family, and she asked the host family, "Where's the White House?" But of course, there's no White House in Spokane, Washington. But Pingala has done wonders for our community and has made our community so much better. She has continued her work of advocacy through World Relief. She is a World Relief employee and has been for 13 years. Her children, her son got a full ride scholarship to Whitworth, and her daughter is in college now. And everything that she had fought for has come true. And so Pingala now, as I said, works for World Relief, and she is an advocate of women. And we have had a very generous endowment from a woman in our Spokane community specifically for women's programs. And so Pingala is acting as that person to head up this program specifically for women's needs, to help build their confidence, to help prepare them for employment, for different classes that we offer. And specifically, we had a wonderful program called Weave, where refugee women would meet and learn how to sew, because it's a very acceptable marketing skill for these women to have. A lot of places, a lot of cultures don't want the women to work, but sewing is acceptable. So that got shut down right before COVID, of course. But these women in Weave were able to make several thousand masks and distribute those throughout the community. So now Pingala is heading up that program. But she is absolutely amazing, and I am going to post her interview on YouTube, so be on the lookout for that in the future.
Well, I have so much more I could say, but I want to honor your time and just let you know that what World Relief is, and I hope what Lisa and I have shared with you, is we are the Refugee Resettlement Agency for the Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, Inland Northwest area. And we're very, very proud to be that. And I could talk for the rest of the evening about what we do and how you can help. But let me just give you a couple of ideas. If you're someone who's never called your congressperson, go ahead. If this is something that's fun and easy to yell at a congressperson about, which is we need more refugees in our country, because refugees do nothing but give and make our country and communities better. So if you haven't called your congressperson today, call your congresspeople and advocate for an increased refugee cap in this country. We have lots of volunteers at World Relief. We have really fun things you get to do as a volunteer. We match people with refugee families, and you just get to walk along with them as a cultural ambassador, just getting to know them, helping them understand. If you've never been to Costco and you come to the United States and the first place you go is Costco, it'll freak you out a little bit. So you might need someone to walk around with you and help you out. Our website is worldreliefspokane.org. The other thing that you can do is you can make a donation to World Relief on our website, or we put together something called welcome kits. Oftentimes when people arrive in Spokane, they have nothing but the clothes on their back and what's in their suitcase. They need things like sheets and towels and pillows and things like that. So we put those together, and we have a warehouse of gently used and gently loved furniture that we give to families when they arrive. And also the heart of our organization is monthly or subscription donors. You can do that on our website as well. I have book recommendations. I can tell you so much more. I can tell you so much more about World Relief. I could talk all night, but that's not why you're here. Do you have any questions for me before I finally sit down?
Where are the donation drop-off sites?
Oh, that's great. World Relief, you can either bring them to our office, or we have some folks that can come and pick some things up. We have a box truck. We can pick up some furniture or those kinds of things. We'll just arrange it in advance and be glad to come get those things from you. Or you just give us a call. We'll be out there on the double. Great. Can I answer any other questions for you? Well, Lisa and I will be here for a little while longer. If you have any questions, feel free to come grab us. As you can tell, I love to talk about this stuff. So I'd love any reason to talk more about it. But thank you so much for your time. And I just want to end with this. The people that are coming to this country as refugees are doing exactly what you are doing. They want to make a life. They want to have a family. They want to have a home. They want to own a business. They want to be successful, just like us. And the only difference is where they come from or how they got to our country. So thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. God bless you for everything that you're doing for your community and your business and your family. Have a great evening. James, thank you so much.